Hi there, this is Pastor Jeff Jones, and I'm the pastor of the Heritage Baptist Church, Columbus, Indiana. And there are a lot of Columbuses in the United States, it seems like, but the only one in Indiana. So if you would, let's take our Bible. We're going to turn to Proverbs chapter 26. Proverbs 26. I was reading through this the other day in my daily reading, and I'm going to read the first 12 verses of chapter 26. And I want you to listen for a common thread or common theme, a word that appears again and again. And that's what I want to deal with today. You there? Proverbs 26. In verse 1, it says, as snow in summer and as rain in harvest, so honor is not seemly for a fool. As the bird by wandering, as the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the ass, and a rod for the fool's back. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. He that sendeth a message by the hand of a fool cutteth off the feet, and drinketh damage. The legs of the lame are not equal, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. Verse number 8, it says, as he that bindeth a stone in a sling, so is he that giveth honor to a fool. As a thorn goeth up into the hand of a drunkard, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. The great God that formed all things both rewardeth the fool and rewardeth transgressors. As a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly. Seest thou a man wise in his own conceit? There is more hope of a fool than of him. Did you see the theme, the common word, the word that showed up in 11 out of 12 verses here? And it stood out to me as I was reading through this chapter that God had a lot to say about a fool. And when those things happen to me as I'm reading, I have some curiosity about that, about how many times God uses that word or deals with fools or folly or foolishness. And it's quite a bit in the book of Proverbs. So I want to deal with this just a little bit. Then maybe next week, next Thursday, I may deal with the wise, dealing today with the fool. And so I did what I do in a lot of the studies that I get interested in. I just printed out a list of all the verses that had to do with fool in the book of Proverbs, and I forgot to see how many actually is listed here. Quite a few. I didn't compile every verse. Some verses were similar to other verses. I don't want to use the word redundant, but it is repetitive in the sense that God is hammering home his point about the fool. And so I want to read some of these, give you the gist of probably there's 25 verses here, and as quick as I can, and then I have some points I want to make. Proverbs 1 verse 22 talks about how fools hate knowledge. Chapter 1 verse 32, the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. They can't handle prosperity. Chapter 3 verse 35, fools don't receive glory. What they do receive is they receive shame. Chapter 10, verse 21, fools die for want of wisdom. And so it is a destructive thing to their life to be a fool. Chapter 12, verse 23, fools proclaimeth foolishness. And then the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. And so it's just in them. Chapter 15, verse 14, the mouth of fools feedeth on foolishness. And so a fool can't seem to keep his mouth shut. And so I'll come back. I have an illustration here I want to use for that verse. Fools don't, in chapter 13, verse 19, fools don't want and won't depart from evil. They're like a magnet held to evil. Chapter 13, verse 20, a companion of fools shall be destroyed. So not only will they destroy themselves, but they'll lead and pull others with them. Chapter 14, verse 9, fools make a mock at sin. And, a lot of comedians, they make a mock of what God says about sin, and it's just an open thing just to be laughed at. Chapter 16, verse 2, the instruction of fools is folly. Chapter 19, verse 3, the foolishness of man perverteth his way, or twists his way, or makes his way rotten. Chapter 22, verse 15, foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. And we'll talk a little bit about that too in children. Chapter 27, verse 22 says, his foolishness, yet will not his foolishness depart from him. Chapter 10, verse 8 and 10 says the same thing. A prating fool shall fall. Chapter 10, verse 18 says, he that uttereth a slander is a fool. Chapter 10, verse 23, a fool for sport does mischief. And so it's his games, it's his kick to do mischievous things. And some of those times, maybe not really meant to harm others, but sometimes it does. Chapter 11, verse 29 says, the fool shall be the servant to the wise. Chapter 12, verse 15, his way is right in his own eyes. And probably not going to be able to tell him any different. Chapter 13, verse 16, a fool layeth open his folly. Chapter 29, 11, a fool uttereth all his mind. Chapter 14, verse 16, the fool rageth and is confident. He's confident in his foolishness. Chapter 15, verse 5, it says, a fool despiseth his father's instruction. Then chapter 17, verse 21, the father of a fool hath no joy. It says in chapter 17, it talks about this in verse 16, a fool has no heart to get wisdom. Chapter 18, verse 2, a fool hath no delight in understanding. The same chapter, verses 6 and 7, a fool's mouth brings contention, a snare, punishment, and destruction. It says in chapter 26, verse 3, it says, a rod for the fool's back. Chapter 20, verse 3 talks about how fools meddle. They get in the middle of things. They're in other people's business. Chapter 23, verse 9, fools despise the wisdom of words. Chapter 26, 10, we just read this. The fool will be rewarded by the great God. Chapter 26, 11, like a dog, as he returns to his vomit, he just returns to his folly. And it's sickening to think how some people won't give up their foolishness. Chapter 28, verse 26, it says that he that trusteth in his own heart is a fool. Man, God has a lot to say about a fool just in one book of the Bible. And it's amazing to me how he just hammering away on this about this person. Could be a man, could be a woman, could be a young person, could be an old person, that they are locked in and won't change. This place where I mentioned here that fools proclaim their foolishness, and the mouth of the fool poureth out foolishness. I was telling our church use this illustration the other day, and I think every mom got they got kind of intense in the telling of the illustration. I noticed all their eyes kind of bugged out a little bit, and I said, I want you to imagine the biggest pitcher you have in your house, a pitcher that you put liquid in. And I said, what would that be, maybe the biggest pitcher in your house? And everybody said, probably a gallon pitcher. And I said, I want you to imagine in that gallon pitcher with no lid, something like a red, maybe like a red Kool-Aid or cranberry juice, or something that would be a deep, something really that would leave a stain. And I want you to picture your child walking through the house with that pitcher full to the brim, I mean, all the way to the top. And you've got brand new white carpet. And that pitcher gets turned this way and that way. And it's just like the women, the ladies were just going back and forth. And I said, are you picturing this in your head? And one of them said, I live this every day. And it was just kind of just a funny thing that they got so intent on it. I said, imagine that pitcher as it sloshes back and forth and it makes a mess everywhere and it's staining. I said, that's God's picture of the mouth of a fool, that they are just gushing out. They can't stop. It's here and there and it's everywhere. And so just a lot of messes in the life of a fool. And so I read a lot of that, and I just want to make some points here about the fool. First of all, a fool does not want knowledge. He doesn't want it. Matter of fact, in some ways, he hates instruction. He doesn't want to be instructed. He knows it all. He doesn't want to be taught. He doesn't want anybody leaning over his shoulder. He hasn't listened to his own parents. And Proverbs talks about these beginning people that God gave us in our life, that they're so desperately important. He has no heart for wisdom. He's not up to it. He doesn't want it, doesn't need it, doesn't see any purpose for it in his life. And I know what some of us have thought about some people. We thought, if I could just give them just a little bit of information, if I can give them just this one little nugget, it's going to help them. And I'm telling you, a fool, it's not going to help them. They don't want it. They're not going to receive it. You could be as intense as you want to be, but they're going to blow it off. It's of no concern. A fool doesn't want knowledge. He doesn't want instruction. He's not going to be taught. He hadn't even listened to his own parents. That's why they have no joy in him. And so don't be surprised. I've said all that to say this. I think we ought to make efforts at times to help people, obviously. But don't be surprised if they don't take, and if it's not just that little bit of knowledge that you knew was going to help them if they just listened to you. If they would listen to you, it would help them, but they're not going to listen. In one ear and out the other. And so, second thing I want to mention, the foolishness in a child grows to be shameful if that same foolishness is in an adult. I think what God's telling us here, that there's some things that we're going to train a child. A spanking is going to remove certain things. There ought to be some silliness about a kid. They're fun. They love life. They're funny. My grandkids say the funniest things. They can be so intense, and they misspeak, or they use the word in the wrong place, and it's innocent. It's funny. We love them. They love me. But there's something, if they carry that silliness, and there's choices being made, if they carry that same silliness where it gets into stupidity, this thing grows. That in an adult, the silliness of a child, some of that carried over to an adult is just wrong. It's not right. There ought to be a seriousness that an adult ought to have. Not meaning that we shouldn't have mirth and laugh and joy and all that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that silliness that is proper for a child it ought to be left in childhood, and there ought to be a seriousness that an adult develops. And this thing can grow in the sense that what was silly becomes stupidity, and then it becomes actual perversity, where it's perverse to be the way some people are. And so some things need to be left in childhood. And I think that's what that verse is talking about. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, and that it needs to be driven from him, trained out of him. Some of that does. Some people make their children adults before they need to be adults too, though. And so we really need the wisdom of the Lord, how to train our children. And God's word has it there for us. The third thing, foolishness has to do with silliness and stupidity. It goes on to perversity, and I mentioned a little bit of that with the children, is that things escalate. Things can escalate. And I think what I want to say with this is that age doesn't relieve us from being a fool. Someone can be a fool at 20 and still be, a fool at 80. They've not grown in the Lord. And in some ways, someone that is 20 may be less of a fool than a man that's 80 and still a fool. He should have learned from life experiences not to be a fool. And so don't let this escalate. Things are seldom static. Things seldom stay the same. They're either going to grow or lessen. Very seldom do things hold in one place. And so things are moving. And so I think foolishness you can become more of a fool to the place where it was maybe a little silly, probably awkward. The timing is not right. humor, even at a funeral can be a proper thing. There's places where it doesn't need to be. It's inappropriate. It's not the right place. So there takes a lot of discretion. And a fool has none of that. He's improper. He's awkward. He's wrong. And so grow in the Lord. Grow in wisdom. And so I think number four, a fool stands in stark contrast to a wise man. We mentioned all these verses have to do with fools meddling, fools despising wisdom, fools being confident when they shouldn't be confident, fools slandering other people, fools making a mock at sin. And so a fool is contrasted by this wise man. They are polar opposites in many ways. A fool is many times wicked. A fool is many times slothful. A wise man is he's righteous. He's diligent, prudent, and he is like 180 degrees different. And so look for the contrast, especially when you're studying the book of Proverbs. Look for the contrast. If it's talking about a fool, many times in the same verse, it gives you the opposite side of that. This is the way the fool is, but this is the way the wise man is. This is what the fool says. This is what the wise man says. This is what the fool has. He has shame. The wise man has honor. The fool makes a mock of sin. Wise man is prudent in the way he thinks and the way he deals with people. And so look for that contrast there. And if you see a fool, you can learn how not to be a fool and to be the exact opposite. Matter of fact, we ought to see certain things and go the opposite direction. And I think that's a lot of what Proverbs is about, is seeing something, going the other way, or seeing the right thing and then getting in line with it. I think number 5 is a fool engages in mischief that leads to his own destruction. Years and years ago, I worked for a retail chain and worked in really nice part of Birmingham, sort of more well-to-do area, and came in one day to open the store and I noticed that the ceiling had fell in and one of the bookcases had collapsed on one side and the back door was open. I don't think that anything was missing. We called the police and they said the guy had fallen through the ceiling, crashed on the bookcase, fell off of that as it fell over on him, and he ran off apparently hurt. And so up to no good, caused his own problems. And there's lots of videos and lots of stories about dumb criminals and that they've been up to mischief. They've done stupid things, and they're the ones that end up getting hurt. I don't know how many times I hear about it. It seems like once a year over the last few years about how somebody's tried to break into somebody's house, and the criminal, rather than deal with the police, they try to hide. They climb up inside of a chimney. And this really pushes my buttons on my claustrophobia, but they get stuck there. And if they don't get heard, they die inside the chimney. And so up to no good, up to mischief, and it leads to their own destruction. It talks about it here again and again about how their sport is to do mischief, and about how a fool, because he has no heart for wisdom, that they won't depart from evil, that fools die for want of wisdom. And so that's more than just a saying. It's the reality is that you play the part of the fool, you're sow to the wind, you're going to reap the whirlwind. There is a law of sowing and reaping that is going to produce a harvest that the fool can't even imagine. I just done this little thing. What's it going to hurt to do this little thing? And they don't realize the ramifications, that it goes farther and farther out. And so we want to learn from that as wise people, as righteous people, and to pass by, not get involved with that. Don't remember the number, but next one is a fool seems easily identified by his mouth. And so he's spouting foolishness. A fool speaks foolish things. A fool utters slander. It's just gushing out of him, and it just gets everywhere. And so, if you've listened to me very often, you've heard me say this, and it's not just original to me, but what you think about is what you're going to say. What you think about is what you're going to do. What you think about is what you're going to be. And so a fool, as foolishness bound in his heart, just like foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, foolishness has stayed there. It's taken root. It's gotten deeper. It's gotten bigger. It's gotten broader. It's gotten bolder. And so this foolishness is going to come out of his mouth. And so, and they're confident in it. They are spouting it. They think they're right. There's somewhere he that trusteth in his own heart is a fool, and so he's trusting it, believing it. He believes his way is the right way. Proverbs 12:15 says his way is right in his own eyes, and so he's not going to listen. He's going to spout the lunacy, and sometimes this gets into spiritual craziness, and where people believe the oddest thing, and it is bizarre to me, but some people can have the strangest beliefs, and they will have followers follow them, and it's like the Pied Piper of fools, leading the rest of the fools with them, and there's somebody to follow every lunatic idea in the world, and that's why it's so important that we filter everything through the Bible. And the Bible will identify what is true and what is not true. And so you say, out of the mouth of a fool, you hear foolishness. And may God give me ears to recognize what is what. Then the last thing is a fool is examined and rewarded by God. And so it says that in chapter 26, verse 10, the fool will be rewarded by the great God. And so I think there's some thoughts that we think some people get over. They game the system, they've hacked it and got past. And it's a big thing today is these hackers, they shut out hospitals and power companies and oil pipelines, and they demand ransom, and they got away. And look, God's going to track. God knows where these people are at. God's going to deal with the fool. And he's going to be examined, and he's not going to have any comeback. He'll have no defense. And I pity the day that they come to that. I don't rejoice in it at all. But it is a serious thing to find yourself standing before the God of creation. And he is going to examine every life, even the fool's life, and he will reward. It says here, the fool will be rewarded by the great God. And so, man, I want to be on the receiving end of good things from God. And so just wanted to give you a few things to think about the fool. And I've been foolish many times in my life, and I have believed things and done things that shouldn't have been a part of my life, and I regret them. I've confessed them as far as I know for the sin that they were, and trying to live a life, hopefully, of not this sort of seriousness that there's no fun in my life, but I'm trying to say that there is a seriousness about life, that there's wisdom that I'm trying to seek, and I would encourage you to seek it also, because wisdom can be had of the Lord. Let him that, and I'm not going to get it right, let him that lack wisdom ask of God. And the promise there is that God will give liberally wisdom from James chapter 1. And you don't have to remain a fool. You don't have to be a fool with your life. And so let's take it up a notch and try to live on the right side. Right? Good. The fool has said in his heart that there is no God. And that's probably the most foolish statement and decision, the way to live your life, is if there is no God, because there is. And if you'll open your eyes, look around you, look at the heavens, this is no accident. This is no chance, random combining of molecules and atoms. This is the hand of God that's worked this. And we know one day we'll stand before him. And righteousness, the righteousness of his Son, we'll stand there as fools, living our life as if he never existed. So hope you have a great day. If there's anything we can do to help you, if there's a question, statement, some series you'd like us to deal with, we'll try to do that. And God bless you. If you've not subscribed, do that, and we'll try to help you. So God bless you.